Korean Mafia boss returned before dawn. Caught his wife off guard. The black cook whispered, "Be still or he'll hear." The sleek black BMW rolled to a silent stop in the circular driveway at 4:37 a.m. Jae-hwan Park cut the engine, his jaw tightening at the faint glow from the study window. His wife Vicky had told him she'd be asleep by 10. He wasn't supposed to return from Tokyo until tomorrow. As he approached the side entrance, a shadow detached itself from the darkness of the kitchen doorway. Tracy, his Nigerian cook, appeared with a finger pressed to her lips. "Be still or he'll hear," she whispered urgently, pulling Jae-hwan back into the shadows. "What's happening in my house?" Jae-hwan hissed, his hand already reaching for the gun holstered beneath his tailored jacket. Tracy's eyes, wide with tension, fixed on his. "Your wife is in the study with Hyun-ki. They don't know I overheard everything." Hyun-ki, disbelief colored his voice, his childhood friend, his second in command, the man who'd saved his life twice. "I've been watching them for weeks," Tracy whispered. "But tonight is different. Tonight they're planning how to kill you." Soft music starts. Jae-hwan's world narrowed to pinpoints of light in the darkness. The December air cut through his expensive wool coat, but he barely felt it. Tracy's words echoed in his mind, impossible yet terrifying. The woman who shared his bed. The man who'd stood beside him since they were street kids fighting for scraps in Seoul's meanest neighborhoods. "Show me," he commanded, his voice dropping to the dangerous whisper his enemies had learned to fear. Tracy led him along the shadow of the house, past manicured hedges still glittering with frost. The ground was hard beneath their feet, winter having settled firmly over the sprawling estate. They moved without sound, two predators in the darkness. At the study window, Tracy stopped and gestured. The curtains weren't fully drawn, leaving a sliver of visibility into the warm room beyond. Jae-hwan pressed himself against the cold stone wall and peered inside. Vicky stood by his mahogany desk, tall and elegant even at this hour, her black hair falling loose around her shoulders. She wore the silk robe he'd brought her from Milan, the deep red one that matched the lipstick she favored. Across from her, Hyun-ki leaned against the bookshelf, still in his business suit, his tie loosened. They were speaking intently, faces animated. "We need the account numbers," Hyun-ki was saying, his voice muffled through the glass. "Once he's gone, the organization will look to whoever controls the money." Vicky shook her head, frustration evident in her movements. "He doesn't trust anyone with that information. Not even me. You're his wife. There must be something. A safe? A hidden file?" He wouldn't leave for Tokyo without ensuring he could access the accounts remotely. Jae-hwan's breath formed small clouds in the frigid air. Ice spread through his veins that had nothing to do with the temperature. Hyun-ki was right. There was a safe behind the painting of Mount Hala in the bedroom. The combination was his mother's birthday, followed by the date he and Vicky had met. "I've searched everywhere," Vicky said, running a hand through her hair. "If it exists, he's hidden it well." Hyun-ki moved closer to her, his expression hardening. "We're running out of time. The Nakamura deal closes tomorrow. Once that happens, Jae-hwan's position will be untouchable. It has to be tonight." "And you're sure it will look natural?" Vicky asked, her voice dropping so low Jae-hwan had to strain to hear. "Cardiac arrest," Hyun-ki confirmed with a nod. "The toxin is undetectable unless they're specifically looking for it. By the time anyone thinks to investigate, it will be too late. The doctor is already paid off." Jae-hwan's hand tightened on his gun, every muscle in his body screaming to burst through the door and end both their lives right there. Only Tracy's steady presence beside him kept him rooted in place. "Not yet," she whispered, seeming to read his thoughts. "There's more you need to know." Inside, Vicky had moved to the window, staring out into the darkness. For a terrifying second, Jae-hwan thought she might see them, but her eyes were unfocused, looking at nothing. "I never wanted this," she said quietly. "When I married him, I thought—" "You thought he would change," Hyun-ki finished for her. "That he would leave this life behind, become legitimate. But men like Jae-hwan don't change, Vicky. The violence, the power. It's in his blood. And what about you? She asked, turning to face him. Aren't you the same? Hyun-Ki's laugh held no humor. The difference is I don't pretend to be something I'm not. I've never lied to you. Except when you told me no one would get hurt. Vicky shot back, her voice suddenly sharp. The bombings in Busan last month. The disappeared journalist. That wasn't part of our agreement. Jaehwan's eyes narrowed. He'd had nothing to do with Busan. The journalist had been investigating political corruption. Nothing connected to his operations. But someone had made it look like his organization was responsible. Now he understood why. Necessary sacrifices, Hyun-Ki said dismissively, to establish the narrative. When Jaehwan dies, people need to believe he had enemies, that his violent ways finally caught up with him. Tracy's hand found Jaehwan's arm, squeezing gently. Come, she whispered. We need to talk somewhere safe. They retreated across the grounds to the small caretaker's cottage where Tracy lived. Unlike the main house with its imposing modern architecture and security systems, the cottage was warm, simple, filled with the lingering scents of Nigerian spices and fresh bread. Tracy quickly drew the curtains and turned on a single lamp, casting the room in soft golden light. How long have you known? Jaehwan demanded, his voice tight with controlled rage. 3 weeks, Tracy answered, moving to the kitchen to put a kettle on the stove. Her movements were efficient, practiced. At first, I thought they were having an affair. I heard them in the greenhouse when I was gathering herbs. But then they started talking about account numbers, about your schedule, about poisons that mimic natural causes. And you didn't tell me immediately because? Tracy turned to face him, her expression unreadable. Because I needed to be sure which of you deserved my loyalty. I've worked in enough dangerous households to know that sometimes the monster isn't who everyone thinks it is. Jaehwan laughed bitterly. And what did you decide, Tracy? Am I the monster in this story? You're a complicated man, Mr. Park, she said simply. I've seen how you treat your employees, how you visit your mother every Sunday, how you read poetry when you think no one is watching. I've also seen the blood on your clothes when you come home late. I've heard the phone calls that end with people disappearing. The kettle began to whistle. Tracy turned to silence it, pouring hot water over tea leaves in 2 ceramic mugs. So what tipped the scales in my favor? Jaehwan asked, accepting the tea she offered. 2 things, Tracy said, sitting across from him at the small wooden table. First, last week I overheard Hyun-Ki on the phone ordering the assassination of a family, children included. He said, make it look like Jaehwan's signature. That's when I realized he's been framing you for his worst atrocities. Jaehwan's hands tightened around the mug. And the second? Tracy met his gaze steadily. The second was the way you leave food for the stray cats behind the kitchen. Monsters don't care for creatures that can offer them nothing in return. The absurdity of it, that his life might be saved because of half-feral cats, almost made Jaehwan laugh. Instead, he took a sip of the tea, letting its warmth seep through him. Why is my wife involved? Is she sleeping with him? Tracy shook her head. Not from what I've seen. This is about money and fear. Hyun-Ki has been poisoning her against you for months, convincing her that you're planning to leave her with nothing, that you have another woman in Tokyo, that you're becoming increasingly violent and unstable. And she believed him? You haven't exactly been present, Mr. Park. When was the last time you had a real conversation with your wife? When was the last time you slept in the same bed? The question hit home. 3 months? 4? Business had consumed him. The Nakamura deal was the culmination of 2 years' work. His chance to legitimize a significant portion of his enterprise. He'd been in Tokyo more than he'd been home. What does Vicky gain from this? He asked, pushing away the uncomfortable self-reflection. Protection. A clean slate. Hyun-Ki has promised to move her back to America. Away from all this. She gets a generous settlement, and he gets your empire. Jaehwan stood abruptly, pacing the small room. I need to end this now. Both of them. Tonight. And confirm everything Hyun-Ki has told her about you? Tracy challenged. Besides, killing them solves nothing. You need to know who else is involved. How deep this conspiracy goes. She was right and he knew it. Acting rashly would only expose him to unseen threats. What do you suggest? He asked, stopping to look at her. Play along. Let them think their plan is working. Gather evidence. Identify everyone involved. And then... She left the sentence unfinished. And then I dismantle their world. Jae-hwan finished coldly. Tracy nodded. But first, we need to understand exactly what they're planning for tonight. The digital clock on Tracy's stove read 5:22 a.m. Dawn would be breaking soon. Jae-hwan pulled out his phone. I'm calling Min-ho, he said, referring to his security chief. We'll need. Tracy's hand shot out, stopping him. No calls. Not yet. We don't know who else is compromised. Jae-hwan stared at her. This cook, this woman he'd barely spoken to beyond giving instructions for dinner parties, was now the only person he could trust. The irony wasn't lost on him. What's your real story, Tracy? He asked suddenly. No ordinary cook analyzes situations like this. A small smile touched her lips. Maybe someday I'll tell you. For now, let's focus on keeping you alive. Music fades. If you're enjoying this story so far, take a quick second to hit that subscribe button. Things are about to get intense, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Now let's continue. They returned to the main house as the first gray light of dawn painted the eastern sky. Jae-hwan's car was still in the driveway, evidence of his unexpected return. Go to the kitchen, he instructed Tracy. Act normal. I'll enter through the front as if I've just arrived. Tracy nodded and slipped away through the service entrance. Jae-hwan walked back to his car, started the engine, and drove around the circular driveway to stop directly in front of the main doors. He grabbed his overnight bag from the trunk and strode up the steps with purpose, using his key to unlock the massive front door. The house was quiet, but he could hear movement from the direction of the bedroom. He set his bag down loudly. Vicky? He called out. I'm home. Footsteps, hurried and light. Vicky appeared at the top of the staircase, her robe tied tightly around her waist, hair slightly mussed as if she'd just woken up. Her surprise seemed genuine, but now he could see the flash of fear behind it. Jae-hwan, you're back early. She descended the stairs, composing herself with each step. By the time she reached him, her mask was perfect. The devoted wife, pleased by her husband's return. The meeting's wrapped up ahead of schedule, he lied smoothly, accepting her kiss on his cheek. Where's Hyun-ki? His car is in the driveway. The tiniest flicker in her eyes. Hyun-ki? Oh, he stopped by late last night with some documents for you to sign. It got so late I offered him the guest room rather than have him drive home. Thoughtful of you, Jae-hwan said, smiling with his mouth but not his eyes. I'm starving. Is Tracy up yet? I could use some breakfast. I'll check, Vicky said quickly. Why don't you shower and change? You must be exhausted from your flight. I am, he agreed, picking up his bag. But first I should say hello to Hyun-ki. Which guest room is he in? The blue room, she answered after a barely perceptible hesitation. But he was up very late. Perhaps we should let him sleep. Jae-hwan was already moving toward the stairs. Nonsense. He'll want to know I'm back. We have work to do today. He climbed the stairs, feeling Vicky's eyes on his back. The blue room was at the end of the west wing, far from the master suite. As he approached, he heard movement inside, dresser drawers closing, the sound of rushing water from the ensuite bathroom. He knocked sharply. Yes. Hyun-ki's voice, alert despite the early hour. It's me, Jae-hwan called. I'm back. Pause, then footsteps. The door opened to reveal Hyun-ki, dressed in slacks and an unbuttoned shirt, his expression a careful mask of surprised pleasure. Hyung, he exclaimed, using the familiar Korean term for an older brother or respected friend. What a surprise. We weren't expecting you until tomorrow. Clearly, Jae-hwan said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Vicky tells me you brought documents? Yes, the preliminary contracts for Nakamura. Hyun-ki confirmed smoothly. Nothing urgent, but I thought you might want to review them before your next meeting. Always thinking ahead, Jae-hwan said, clapping him on the shoulder. The touch, once brotherly, now felt like ash in his mouth. Join me for breakfast in 30 minutes? We should discuss the next steps. Of course, Hyun-ki agreed, buttoning his shirt. I'll be down shortly. As Jae-hwan turned away, he caught sight of Hyun-ki's phone on the bedside table. A text message notification glowed on the screen. Just one word visible. Tonight. In the kitchen, Tracy was already preparing breakfast, moving efficiently between the commercial-grade stove and the marble countertops. The smell of fresh coffee and frying bacon filled the air. "Good morning, Mr. Park," she said formally as he entered. "I wasn't expecting you back today. Would you like your usual breakfast?" "Yes, thank you, Tracy," he replied, equally formal. But as he passed her to pour himself coffee, he murmured, "Anything. Nothing concrete," she whispered back. "But she made a call as soon as you arrived." Sounded panicked. Vicky entered the kitchen, now fully dressed in an elegant cream sweater and tailored pants. Her makeup was flawless, her hair perfectly styled. No trace of the woman who'd been conspiring in his study hours ago. "Something smells wonderful, Tracy," she commented, accepting the cup of tea the cook offered her. "Jae-hwan, why don't you rest today? You must be exhausted from your trip." "I'm fine," he said, watching her over the rim of his coffee cup. "Besides, Hyun-ki and I have work to do. The Nakamura deal is almost closed." "About that," Vicky said, setting her cup down carefully. "Hyun-ki mentioned there might be some complications. Something about the Japanese authorities asking questions." Jae-hwan's eyes narrowed slightly. There were no complications. The deal was clean, the legitimate purchase of a technology company that would provide a perfect front for laundering operations while actually turning a profit in its own right. It was his masterpiece. His path to eventual legitimacy. "Nothing we can't handle," he said dismissively. "What else did Hyun-ki share with you?" "Not much," Vicky said too quickly. "You know I don't understand the business side of things." A lie. Vicky had an MBA from Stanford. Before their marriage, she'd been a rising star at a venture capital firm in Silicon Valley. Her understanding of business had been one of the things that attracted him to her. Hyun-ki entered, looking refreshed and alert. "Something smells amazing, Tracy," he said, flashing her the charming smile that had helped him negotiate countless deals. "You spoil us." Tracy nodded politely, placing plates of food on the kitchen island. "Will there be anything else, Mr. Park?" "No, thank you," Jae-hwan replied. "You can take the rest of the morning off. I'm sure you were up late catering to my unexpected guest." Tracy's eyes met his briefly before she nodded and left the kitchen. The message was clear. Find out what you can. Breakfast proceeded with excruciating normalcy. Jae-hwan discussed the Tokyo meetings, feeding Hyun-ki and Vicky information that was mostly true but strategically incomplete. Hyun-ki asked all the right questions, offered all the appropriate insights. Vicky smiled and commented in all the right places. It was a perfect performance from all three of them. "We should celebrate the deal's completion," Vicky suggested as they finished eating. "A small dinner party tonight? Just the three of us and perhaps Min-ho and his wife." Jae-hwan saw the quick glance between her and Hyun-ki. So tonight was when they planned to act. "Wonderful idea," he agreed, watching their momentary relief. "But let's make it just us. Min-ho is overseeing security at the warehouse tonight. I want this to be intimate. Special." "Perfect," Vicky said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "I'll have Tracy prepare something extraordinary." "Speaking of which," Hyun-ki interjected, "how long has she been working for you?" "The Nigerian woman. Tracy? Almost a year now," Jae-hwan answered, watching him carefully. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious. She's quite observant. I noticed her watching me last night when I arrived." "She's protective of our household," Vicky said quickly. "Sometimes too much so. I've spoken to her about it." Jae-hwan made a mental note to ensure Tracy's safety. If Hyun-ki suspected anything, she would be his first target. "Well," he said, standing from the table, "I need to shower and change." "Hyun-ki," Shall we meet in my study in an hour? We should finalize our strategy for the Nakamura signing tomorrow. Of course, Hyun-ki agreed. I'll prepare the documents. As Jae-hwan climbed the stairs to the master suite, he felt the weight of their eyes on his back. In his pocket, his phone vibrated with an incoming text. Hidden in the third drawer of your desk. Inside hollowed book. Don't let them see you find it. He smiled slightly. Tracy worked quickly. Perhaps there was evidence in his own study that would reveal the full extent of their betrayal. But more importantly, he now had absolute confirmation. Tonight, they planned to kill him, and he would be ready. Alone in his bathroom, Jae-hwan stared at his reflection in the mirror. 15 years of building an empire, of making difficult choices, of navigating a world where trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. And now the two people closest to him were plotting his death over breakfast. He showered quickly and dressed in one of his custom suits, armor for the battle ahead. When he entered his study, Hyun-ki was already there, arranging documents on the desk. Ah, there you are, Hyun-ki said with a smile that had once seemed brotherly but now appeared predatory. I've prepared everything for tomorrow's signing. Jae-hwan nodded, his eyes scanning the room. The hollowed book would be in the third drawer, according to Tracy, but he couldn't access it with Hyun-ki watching. Let me see what we have, he said, settling behind his desk. For the next hour, they reviewed contracts and financial projections. To anyone observing, they were simply two businessmen preparing for an important deal. But beneath the surface, each word was calculated, each gesture measured. I need to make a call, Jae-hwan finally said, glancing at his watch. Give me the room for a few minutes. Hyun-ki hesitated, then nodded. Of course, I'll check with Vicky about tonight's dinner. As soon as the door closed, Jae-hwan moved quickly. He opened the third drawer of his desk and found several books neatly arranged. Running his fingers along the spines, he found one that felt lighter than it should. A first edition of Korean poetry his mother had given him years ago. Inside, the pages had been hollowed out to create a small compartment containing a USB drive and a small recording device. He pocketed both, careful to leave the book exactly as he'd found it. Whatever evidence Tracy had discovered, it was now in his possession. The day passed in a strange dance of normalcy and underlying tension. Jae-hwan made calls, reviewed documents, and prepared for the Nakamura signing as if nothing were amiss. Vicky arranged the evening's dinner with Tracy, selecting wines and planning the menu with peculiar intensity. Hyun-ki came and went, making calls from his car rather than the house. At 6 p.m., Tracy brought tea to Jae-hwan's study. Dinner will be served at 8 o'clock, Mr. Park, she said formally, setting the cup on his desk. As she leaned forward, she whispered, The blue bottle in your wife's vanity. That's where the poison is. She'll try to put it in your whiskey before dinner. Jae-hwan nodded almost imperceptibly. Thank you, Tracy. I'm looking forward to your cooking tonight. I've prepared something special, she replied, her eyes conveying the double meaning. When she left, Jae-hwan connected the USB drive to his laptop. It contained audio files, screenshots of text messages, and photographs. A meticulously assembled dossier documenting months of betrayal. Tracy had been more thorough than he could have imagined. One audio file captured Hyun-ki on the phone. Once Jae-hwan is gone, we move quickly. The Chinese will support us, and the Russians owe me. The organization will have a seamless transition. Another showed financial transfers, millions flowing into offshore accounts under Hyun-ki's control. Most damning was a video taken from what appeared to be a hidden camera in the greenhouse. Hyun-ki handing Vicky a small blue bottle. 2 drops in his whiskey, Hyun-ki instructed. Tasteless, odorless. He'll feel the effects within an hour. By morning, it will look like heart failure. And the autopsy? Vicky asked, her face troubled. The medical examiner is taken care of, Hyun-ki assured her. Trust me, it's foolproof. Jae-hwan closed the laptop, a cold rage settling over him. He had everything he needed. Now it was time to set his own trap. Soft music transition. At precisely 8 p.m., Jae-hwan descended the stairs to the dining room. Vicky had outdone herself with the decorations. Candles, fresh flowers, their finest china. A perfect setting for a murder. "There you are," she said, gliding toward him in a black dress that accentuated her figure. "Hyun-ki just arrived. He's in the study having a drink. Join him while I check on dinner." Jae-hwan smiled and kissed her cheek. "You look beautiful tonight." Something flickered in her eyes. Guilt? Regret? It was gone before he could be sure. In the study, Hyun-ki stood by the window, a glass of scotch in hand. He turned as Jae-hwan entered. "There he is," Hyun-ki said warmly. "The man of the hour. Tomorrow you'll make history with Nakamura." "If I live that long," Jae-hwan thought but didn't say. "Pour me one," he asked instead, nodding toward the crystal decanter. Hyun-ki moved to the bar cart. The 30-year Macallan? To celebrate. Why not? Jae-hwan agreed, watching Hyun-ki's every move. Hyun-ki poured the amber liquid into a heavy crystal glass. No sign of tampering. That would come later from Vicky. "To success," Hyun-ki offered, raising his glass. "To loyalty," Jae-hwan countered, not drinking yet. The door opened and Vicky entered, her smile brilliant in the low light. "Tracy says dinner is ready. Shall we?" She moved to Jae-hwan's side, her hand brushing his as she took his arm. He felt something small and cool press into his palm, the recording device he'd found earlier now activated. She was wearing a wire. The dining room gleamed under the chandelier's light. Tracy served the first course, a delicate seafood bisque, with professional efficiency. Her eyes met Jae-hwan's briefly as she poured wine. "This looks amazing, Tracy," Vicky commented. "You've outdone yourself." "Thank you, ma'am," Tracy replied. "I've prepared everything exactly as instructed." Dinner proceeded with excruciating normality. They discussed the Nakamura deal, upcoming social events, art exhibitions in Seoul. All while the recording device captured every word. After the main course, Vicky stood. "I'll get your whiskey, darling. I know you prefer it to dessert wine." "Allow me," Hyun-ki offered, but Vicky shook her head. "No, stay and keep him company. I know exactly how he likes it." She disappeared toward the study where the bar cart waited. Tracy began clearing plates, her movements unhurried but alert. "You've been quiet tonight," Hyun-ki observed, studying Jae-hwan. "Nervous about tomorrow?" "Not nervous," Jae-hwan replied. "Just reflective. 15 years building this organization. Sometimes I wonder who I can really trust." Something shifted in Hyun-ki's expression. A tightening around the eyes, a tension in his shoulders. "You can always trust me, brother," he said, the word brother sounding hollow now. "We've come too far together." Vicky returned carrying a silver tray with 3 glasses, whiskey for Jae-hwan, cognac for Hyun-ki, and a dessert wine for herself. "A toast," she suggested, handing out the drinks. Her fingers trembled slightly as she gave Jae-hwan his glass. "To the future." Jae-hwan raised his glass, watching as they both drank first. A test. He brought the whiskey to his lips but didn't drink, merely wetting them with the liquid. "Excellent," he said, setting the glass down. "Now, before we continue, I have something to share with you both." He reached into his pocket and withdrew his phone. With a few taps, he connected it to the dining room's hidden speakers. A moment later, Hyun-ki's voice filled the room. 2 drops in his whiskey. Tasteless, odorless. He'll feel the effects within an hour. By morning, it will look like heart failure. Then Vicky's voice. "And the autopsy?" "The medical examiner is taken care of. Trust me, it's foolproof." The color drained from both their faces. Vicky's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. "What is this?" Hyun-ki demanded, standing abruptly. "The truth," Jae-hwan said calmly. "Something in short supply lately." Tracy appeared in the doorway, no longer the subservient cook but standing tall, her eyes sharp and focused. "The house is surrounded," Jae-hwan continued. "My men have been in position since noon. The police have copies of everything, the financial records, the meeting with the poisoner in Gangnam, the conversations with the Chinese and Russians." Hyun-ki's hand moved toward his jacket, But Jae-hwan was faster. His gun appeared as if by magic, aimed steadily at his former friend's chest. "Don't," he warned quietly. Vicky was shaking, tears streaming down her face. "Jae-hwan, please. You don't understand. He said you were going to kill me, that you knew about my past, about my brother's debts, that you were planning to use me as a scapegoat." Jae-hwan's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about? Your wife's brother owes money to the wrong people in America," Tracy supplied, stepping fully into the room. "Hyun-ki offered to make those problems disappear if she helped him take you down. Is this true?" Jae-hwan asked, his eyes never leaving Hyun-ki. "You were never there," Vicky cried. "Always in Tokyo, always working. He was there. He listened. He helped when David got in trouble." "I didn't know about your brother," Jae-hwan said quietly. "You never told me. Would it have mattered?" Vicky challenged, anger replacing fear. "You live in your own world, Jae-hwan. I'm just an accessory. A trophy wife you parade at functions then forget about." The truth of her words hit him harder than he expected. He had been absent, focused on building his empire, on the Nakamura deal that would legitimize everything. He'd neglected the woman he'd once loved enough to marry. "So you decided to kill me?" he asked, his voice betraying nothing of the hurt beneath. "That was never the original plan," Vicky said, glancing at Hyun-ki. "It was just information at first. Bank accounts, schedules. But then I realized you would never step aside willingly." Hyun-ki finished for her, his mask finally dropping. "You've grown weak, Jae-hwan. Chasing respectability, trying to turn criminals into businessmen. The organization needs strength, not compromise. And the bombings in Busan? The journalist? The family you ordered killed last week?" Jae-hwan demanded. "Was that strength?" Hyun-ki's smile was cold. "Necessary sacrifices for the greater good. Something you've forgotten how to make." The front door opened, and heavy footsteps approached. Min-ho, Jae-hwan's security chief, appeared in the doorway, flanked by two of his most trusted men. "Boss," he said with a respectful nod. "Take him," Jae-hwan ordered, indicating Hyun-ki. "Secure room 3. No one speaks to him without my presence." Hyun-ki didn't resist as Min-ho's men seized his arms. But as they led him past Jae-hwan, he leaned in and whispered, "You think this ends with me? There are others, many others. You'll never know who to trust again." When he was gone, Jae-hwan turned to Vicky, who stood trembling beside the broken glass on the floor. "And what do I do with you?" he asked softly. "Whatever you're going to do, just get it over with," she replied, lifting her chin defiantly despite her tears. Jae-hwan studied her. This woman he'd once loved, who had been willing to watch him die. There should be hatred, but all he felt was a profound sadness. "Pack a bag," he said finally. "Min-ho will take you to the airport. Your passport and $10 million will be waiting. Enough to pay your brother's debts and start a new life. But understand this. If you ever return to Korea, if you ever speak of me or my organization to anyone, there is nowhere on this earth you can hide." Vicky stared at him in disbelief. "You're letting me go?" "I'm acknowledging my part in this," Jae-hwan replied. "I was not the husband you deserved. But you made your choice, Vicky. Now live with it." When she had gone to pack, escorted by one of Min-ho's men, Jae-hwan sank into a dining chair, suddenly exhausted. Tracy moved quietly around the table, collecting the untouched whiskey and broken glass. "You didn't kill her," she observed, her voice carefully neutral. "Would you have preferred that outcome?" he asked, watching her methodical movements. "No," Tracy answered truthfully. "There's been enough death. Why did you help me?" Jae-hwan asked the question that had been nagging at him all day. "You could have stayed out of it. Let nature take its course." Tracy paused, considering her answer. "My father was a police officer in Lagos. He was killed by a corrupt colleague who he trusted completely. I was 16. I watched my mother collapse when they brought her the news." She met his gaze steadily. "No one deserves to die at the hands of those they trust." Jae-hwan nodded, understanding more about her now. What will you do now, Tracy? I imagine being my cook holds little appeal after all this. A small smile touched her lips. Actually, Mr. Park, I'm rather good at cooking. And it seems to me you could use someone you can trust in your household. For the first time that day, Jae-hwan laughed. A genuine sound that surprised even him. Yes, he agreed. I suppose I could. Music transition. If you're still with me, hit that like button right now. The story isn't over yet, and trust me, you want to see how this ends. Drop a comment telling me what you think Jae-hwan should do with Hyun-ki. Should he show mercy or make him pay? Let me know below. 1 month later, Jae-hwan stood in his office overlooking the Seoul skyline. The Nakamura deal had been completed successfully. Hyun-ki's network of conspirators had been identified and dealt with. Some removed from the organization, others persuaded to renew their loyalty. The transition had been surprisingly smooth. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Enter, he called. Tracy came in, no longer wearing the cook's uniform but dressed in elegant business attire. After the events of that night, Jae-hwan had discovered her background went far beyond cooking. She had degrees in international relations and business intelligence. Now she served as his personal advisor, her insights proving invaluable during the reorganization. The reports you requested, she said, placing a folder on his desk. The Lagos operation is proceeding ahead of schedule. Jae-hwan nodded. And our other matter? Resolved, Tracy confirmed. Your former wife has settled in Vancouver. She's opened a small gallery. Her brother's debts have been paid in full. Good, Jae-hwan said. He didn't wish Vicky harm, despite everything. And Hyun-ki, Tracy's expression hardened slightly, still maintaining his silence. But the information we recovered from his accounts has been illuminating. Jae-hwan had chosen not to kill Hyun-ki, not out of mercy, but because the man's knowledge was too valuable. He was being held in a remote location, comfortable but securely contained, his future undetermined. Will you be attending the charity gala tonight? Tracy asked, changing the subject. Yes, Jae-hwan confirmed. It's important to maintain appearances, especially now. I've laid out your tuxedo, she said, turning to leave. Car will be ready at 7. Tracy, he called as she reached the door. When she turned, he asked, Are you ever going to tell me the rest of your story? Who you really are? She smiled enigmatically. Perhaps, when the time is right. Music transition. 6 months later, Jae-hwan's organization had transformed. The legitimate businesses flourished, while the more questionable operations were gradually phased out. Tracy had become indispensable, her international connections opening doors previously closed to him. They worked closely, often late into the night. Their relationship remained professional but warmed with growing mutual respect and something that might, in time, become friendship. You never asked what happened to the recording device, Tracy said one evening as they reviewed contracts in his study. The one Vicky was wearing? Jae-hwan looked up, curious. She was recording everything for Hyun-ki, Tracy explained. Insurance in case you somehow survived their attempt. And yet you let her leave with it, he observed. Tracy's smile held a secret. Not exactly. I switched it while helping her pack. She left with a non-functioning duplicate. Jae-hwan shook his head, amused despite himself. You continue to surprise me. Good, Tracy replied simply. In your world, becoming predictable is dangerous. Music transition. 2 years passed. The Park Group was now recognized as a legitimate business empire spanning technology, real estate, and international trade. Jae-hwan had stepped back from the shadows, becoming a public figure known for philanthropy and business acumen rather than fear. Tracy remained by his side, officially as Chief Strategy Officer, unofficially as his most trusted confidant. Their relationship had evolved into something neither could easily define. Deeper than friendship, not quite romance, but essential to them both. On a quiet evening at the estate, remodeled now, all traces of the past erased, they sat on the terrace overlooking the gardens. I received an interesting report today, Tracy said, sipping her wine. Vicky has remarried. An art dealer in British Columbia. Is she happy? Jae-hwan asked, surprising himself with how much he wanted the answer to be yes. Seems to be, Tracy confirmed. Her brother is doing well too. Clean for 18 months. Jae-hwan nodded, pleased. And what about you, Tracy? Are you happy here? She considered the question carefully as she did all things. I am, though I never expected my life to take this path. Nor I, he admitted. I was supposed to die that night. But you didn't, she said softly, because you were willing to be still and listen, to trust someone unexpected. The best decisions often come from the most unexpected sources, Jae-hwan replied, his eyes meeting hers across the small table between them. Something shifted in that moment, an acknowledgement of what had been building between them for months, perhaps years. Tracy, he began, but she shook her head. Not yet, she said, though her smile held promise. We have time. Music transition. 5 years after that fateful dawn, Jae-hwan Park stood at the altar of a small chapel overlooking the ocean. Beside him stood Tracy, radiant in a simple ivory gown that complemented her dark skin perfectly. Their journey from employer and cook, from conspirator and saved, from colleagues to lovers had been unconventional, but somehow inevitable. They had rebuilt his empire together, transforming it into something they could both be proud of. The ceremony was small, just trusted friends and family. Tracy's mother had flown in from Lagos, tearfully proud of her daughter. Jae-hwan's few remaining relatives seemed surprised but pleased by his choice. As they exchanged vows, Jae-hwan thought about the strange path that had led them here, how close he had come to losing everything, how one person's decision to speak up had changed not just his fate but the fate of hundreds who depended on his organization. I do, he said, the words carrying the weight of everything they had survived together. I do, Tracy echoed, her eyes holding his with the same steadiness they had shown that dawn when she'd whispered, "Be still or he'll hear." Music softens. At the reception, as they shared their first dance, Tracy leaned close to his ear. "I never told you why I really decided to help you that night." "Why?" he asked, curious after all these years. "Because when you thought no one was watching, I saw you leave food for the stray cats behind the kitchen," she said, echoing her words from that night. "And I thought anyone who shows kindness when there's nothing to gain might be worth saving." Jae-hwan smiled, holding her closer. "I'm glad you thought so." "Me too," she whispered. "Me too. Life is rarely simple, especially for people like Jae-hwan Park. But sometimes, in the most unexpected moments, we find exactly what we need. Not what we thought we wanted, but what our soul requires to truly live. Sometimes, we need someone to pull us into the shadows and whisper, 'Be still.' Someone who sees us clearly, our darkness and our light, and chooses to stand beside us anyway. Someone who helps us become better than we ever imagined we could be. And sometimes, if we're very fortunate, that someone becomes the greatest love we'll ever know." Music fades. If the story touched your heart, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more international love stories to life. What was your favorite part? Was it the betrayal, the revenge, or the unexpected love story? Drop a comment below and let me know. Remember, beautiful souls, sometimes our greatest blessings come disguised as our darkest moments. Stay blessed, stay loved, and I'll see you in the next video.